So for accelerated lesson 1-3, we can take these notes and put them in Cornell format. We are starting with what we call adding integers, and how do we do that? But what I want to remind you is that when we have integers and we are trying to add them, we just learned in our last lesson that if we have opposites, for example, if we have a positive 1 and a negative 1, we know that that is going to equal 0. We know that a positive 5 and a negative 5, if we add those together, is going to equal 0. So I want us thinking about our opposites as we go through this and thinking about the opposites equaling 0. The first question we have is, how can we show a representation of adding integers? Well, I like to literally use subtraction symbols and addition symbols. So I'm going to start actually at the far right problem where it says 1 and 4, 1 plus 4. We all know what 1 plus 4 is. We all know that that answer is going to be a 5. But how could I represent that? Well, 1 means, and it's a positive 1, means I'm going to have 1 plus sign. And 4 means I'm going to have 4 positive plus signs. And so if I have 1 plus 4, how many symbols do I have, or what do we see? We see 5 plus signs. So our answer there is 5. So this is just a visual way of helping us figure out how we add when we have positive numbers and negative numbers, which we call our integers here. Let's go backwards here and look at negative 3 and positive 2. A negative 3 would mean that we have 3 negative symbols because the 3 is negative. The positive 2 means I have 2 positive symbols. And I want to remind you that we know opposites equal 0. So 1 negative and 1 positive is going to cancel out. And what do you notice that we have left? We have a negative symbol, and we only have one of them. So your final answer for negative 3 plus 2 is a negative 1. Go ahead and pause for a second and see if you can do the next one by representing it with positive and negative numbers. Hopefully you got your answer. Let's go ahead and look at 9 plus negative 4. Well, 9 means I'm going to have 9 plus signs. So there's my 9 plus signs. And my negative 4 means I'm going to have 4 negative symbols. And you have learned that opposites are equal to 0. So 1 plus and 1 minus is going to cancel out. It's going to be 0, nothing. And another one cancels out. And another one cancels out. And another one cancels out. And what do I have left? I have 5 positive symbols. So positive 5 is my answer. Quick little side note or question, and I'll answer this by the end, but looking at the 9 and the negative 4, how could we automatically look at those and determine, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Not necessarily what the number is, but will it be a positive or a negative answer? And same with the one we did before in green, negative 3 plus 2. How can I look at those and determine, is my answer going to be positive or negative? Let's go ahead and look at the very last one here. It says negative 5 and negative 8. If we write that out, we know we're going to have 5 negatives, and we're going to have 8 more negatives. And I have all negatives written, so I can't cancel anything out. There are no opposites. And so if I have a negative 8 and a negative 5, we know we're going to have a negative value, and that negative value is 13. So negative 13 would be my answer for this. So when we have two numbers that have a sum of 0, they are called opposites. Let's type that one in there. But we also have a fancy other word that we can relate to those, and we can call them additive inverses. So we have opposites and additive inverses. So those are, let's look at our example 3 on page 21, and I'm just kind of walking through this one with you. We're going to circle yes or no if the two numbers are additive inverses. So 2 and negative 2, are those additive inverses? Or you could ask yourself, are those opposites? And the correct answer there is yes. Negative 4 and 0, no. Those are not opposites or additive inverses. Negative 5 and 5, yes. And yes. Oh, I lied. So sorry. Mrs. Bora made a mistake here. Negative 1 and negative 1 are the exact same value. They're not opposites. They are a no. So we have to be careful when we see the same thing so you don't make the same mistake I just made. So what do we know about additive inverses and what do we know about opposites? We know that problem number 1 and 3 there are going to equal 0 if you add them together. So I'm going to go back to that question I asked you earlier when I said, if you had a positive and a negative, how could we look at that and how could we determine if we know our answer is going to be positive or negative? So it says let's look at the first one here. It says when adding two numbers with the same sign, and I'm going to underline that because that's important. We're going to add the numbers and do what? Let's look at our example up there, and I will box it in black up here. Let's look at this example. The negative 5 and negative 8. Those are the same signs. Look at my answer. All I do is add those together and I put the negative symbol. So if you add the numbers and they have the same sign, you just keep that sign. So our examples at the top were the negative 5 and the negative 8. It's going to be a negative answer because they're both negative. And we just add 5 and 8 and we get 13. Let's also look at one that we've known since our early days in school. If we have a positive 1 and a positive 4, those are both positive. So my answer is going to be positive and we just add them together. So if you have the same sign, then it's going to be, you just add the numbers and that is your sign. If it's positive, it's going to be positive like I just showed you. If it's two negatives added together, your answer is going to be negative and just add the values. But what happens when you're adding integers with different signs? Okay, this one gets a little tricky. Let's go ahead and I'm going to circle. My 2 in the middle up here have different signs. I have the 9 and the negative 4. 9 plus negative 4. And I have the negative 3 and the 2. How could I look at the 9 and negative 4 and how could I automatically tell you that this is going to be a positive answer? And how can I look at the negative 3 and the positive 2 and automatically tell you this is going to be a negative answer? And what we're looking at there is we are looking at the actual digits. 9 and 4, which number technically, if we took the absolute value of them, which number is bigger, the 9 or the 4? The 9 is. If we took the absolute value of our negative 3 and our 2, technically, which number would be bigger? the 3. So that's why our answer is going to be negative. So we need to be very careful when our symbols are different, when we have a positive and a negative. I suggest doing your plus and minus symbols, and opposites cancel out and get 0. You want to find, when we are adding these two integers, we can type in our word here. We do want to find, when adding two integers with different signs, you find the difference of the numbers and take the sign of the bigger. Or you find the absolute value of the numbers and take the sign of the bigger value. Take the sign of the bigger value. And again, I think we just need practice with writing them out. Our plus signs, our minus signs, and canceling them out. Let's practice 1, 3 here, and we are done.